Good afternoon. May I ask you to take your seats, please? You are a role model, like always. So, everyone, get your seats, please. So, I believe we are ready for session 2. Good afternoon. And of course, I understand that everyone welcomes the networking opportunities at the ERTMS 2024 conference. Now, following the most interesting debate that we just had in session 1, I would even call it the political panel, I am coming to a more dry subject, and this dry subject is the legal framework, where we will explain to you what is the underlying legal basis today and in the future. And before I call the panel on stage, I would like to speak a couple of introductory words, and if I could have my presentation, please. Note the first one. Can we go back? So, in the political panel, a lot was spoken about harmonization and standardization, and I will follow the principle of standardization in my 3 slides, because I'm reusing old slides. So the first slide you have already seen, I used it in my opening speech. And it's just to explain to you that, as Matthias Rütte pointed out, ERTMS should not be seen as an overlay system. ERTMS is the basis for transformation of the European railway system, for transformation of the patchwork of national systems into a single European railway area. And of course, the single European railway area needs to be based on a European mindset. Now, this slide I did in 2016, and it's still valid today. In 2016, of course, I didn't know the creativity of Christian Schmidt, who came with a number of alternative explanations for ERTMS. Here, I referred to E meaning European and not expensive. And in the European rail traffic management system, compatibility is vital, and in 2016, the Commission, the agency, and the stakeholders signed a memorandum of understanding which contains a definition of compatibility which is still true and important today. We need to note that while the infrastructure is, of course, always tied to the place where it is implemented, the rolling stock is moving. And the rolling stock needs to work with different infrastructure. That's the basis of interoperability, the basis of harmonization. This is why normally we demand from the onboard unit the full compliance with the specification, whereas the infra manager can, of course, select the functions he needs, and these functions should be within the compatibility framework by the specification. And unfortunately, and mainly because of the interaction with the Class B systems, the existing signaling systems, we have seen many dialects. Dialects where additional functions are demanded in the infrastructure, or where functions that are in the standard were implemented differently. Now, since 2019, we have the process of ERTMS trackside approval, and the purpose of ERTMS trackside approval is exactly to make sure that the infra managers are within the framework of the specification. This morning, I listened to the criticism brought forward by one of the panelists, by Alberto Mazzola, that trackside approval takes long. I can assure you that the duration of the process, but it is true for all other processes the agency manages, the duration of the process is always determined by the applicant. When the applicant delivers the documentation, we are very, very quick in signing our decision. And perhaps Alberto could speak to the president of CER, and we have several members of ÖBB infrastructure here. We just last year did the trackside approval for ÖBB infrastructure, and we did it in less than 6 months, which was, of course, also thanks to the quality of the documentation submitted. The second item that was mentioned in the previous panel was authorization. And of course, we need to understand authorization in the broader sense, because what is really problematic is the ESC and RSC, the ERTMS system compatibility and radio system compatibility. We introduced that in 2019 with the best intentions, but unfortunately, we have seen that this has created a number of difficulties, and it will be one of the subjects that the Commission and ERA will urgently address and try to rectify. My personal view is that if we have a working trackside approval, and if the installation on the infrastructure is found to be compatible, the ESC should be a check, meaning you can tick the compliance and not be extensive tests. The second task in the role of the agency as system authority is vehicle authorization. I have asked the team to give me the figures up to yesterday. So ERA has already authorized 7,000 vehicles with ERTMS on it for 170 different types. So this is already quite impressive, and of course the third pillar of the agency and the system authorities are work on the specification. Just coming back to vehicle authorization, of course the advantage of using ERA is when you operate in several member states. The largest area of use that we have authorized so far is 15 member states. Imagine you have to authorize a vehicle for 15 member states and have to go to 15 different national safety authorities. When you go to ERA, to the one-stop shop, you do it in one application and you have authorization in 1 + 4 months. Now, the final slide is even older. It's a slide that I did in around 2010, and it is some background to the statements that we always hear, that we have no stable specification and the specification is changing all the time. Clearly, there is an evolution of the specifications, but in 2005, there was several events. ERA became operational. The then ERTMS coordinator Karel Wink took office, and at the time I was in UNIFE, we created the UNIFE ETCS steering committee. And by then, we did the strategic planning of the ETCS versions. And what we did in 2005 was, we defined 2008 for the baseline 230D, D standing for debugged. We did the planning that in 2015, 16, we should have a baseline 3, and we did the planning that in 2022, there should be the game changers. And this planning from 2005 is stable since almost 20 years. So, in reality, the evolution, the direction, the pace of specifications has been very predictable and surprisingly well followed in the timing. Just to remind you, and this is really the old slide, I have just put it into the template of ERA. What we also see in this slide is that we have introduced the baseline 3 as the compatibility reference. Alberta was asking earlier, who has taken the decision on baseline 4? And he says he doesn't know. This is not entirely true, because it's absolutely clear who has taken the decision. I have signed the recommendation of the agency, and the member states have voted for it in risk. So it's very clear who has taken the decision and who has taken the responsibility for what is now defined as baseline 4 release 1. And why is baseline 4 system version 3 not compatible with system version 2? Simply because we have GSMR, which is technology from 1992, and it is circuit switched. When GSMR or GSM was developed, there was no vision of IP, there was no vision of the importance of the internet. Now we are commercially in 5G, and we needed to make the transition from the circuit switch GSM 2G 1992 to the technology of today, which is IP-based. And unfortunately, this is a technology change that we could not influence ourselves. We have to follow. I also would like to remind you that in 2019, there was a unanimous decision by the sector, meaning the Commission, ERA, and all the representative bodies, to go for this technology change and to introduce the IP interface. And it was also the decision on the basis that the earlier we make that transition, the better it is, because the less vehicles you have to retrofit, the better it is. So, in front of this background, in front of this overall strategic roadmap to the standardization and the legal framework, I would now like to call the panelists on stage. And the first two are the ERA project officers for the TSI 2022-2023. I call Juan Hernandez and Walter Malfe. Walter, please, and Juan, please take the floor and give us the background on the TSI 23. Please, applause for Walter and Juan.
So, good morning, everybody. I wait for the slides to show up. Thank you. So, we will present, or try to present in 15 minutes, the main aspects of the CCS TSI 2023, and we divide it in two topics. I will speak about the ERTMS specification. I think Christian Smith said EECT, where we make the specifications. And Juan will more speak about the CCS TSI, how the transition regimes related to the new functionalities and the new baseline has to be managed. It was not aligned with Joseph, but I did the same. I used an old slide from the previous conference just to show how committed we are on the scope. And you will see the same each time with a green checkbox. So first of all, the new ERTMS specifications, we added ATO up to GOE2 for ETCS equipped lines, which can be seen as the third part of ERTMS. So you will see in the CCS TSI now ATO as a new part. This, of course, is part of the mandate that we receive for digital and green rail, and ATO will provide capacity benefits and provide energy savings. The second important change in the ERTMS specifications is what we call the ETCS readiness for FMCS. In the mandate, although as project officer I was not so happy with this workload and this thing, it was decided, look, give a longer time for ETCS and make ETCS ready for FMCS. We knew that FMCS specifications would not be part of this TSI, but it was clearly part of the mandate that ETCS should be ready to be interfaced not only from a hardware, but also from a functional point of view with FMCS. This is delivered, and this is part of the TSI 2023. So products can be ordered for this. Third element, which is more, I clustered it around the digital rail. In the digital rail, we have already in the previous sets in baseline 3, MR1, baseline 3, release 2, the ETCS level 3. But in this baseline 4, everything and the missing items are included. The main aspects that we did is merging ETCS level 2 and level 3 into one radio level. It's still called level 2, which the first feedback I got from the labs is one of the first significant simplifications in the ETCS part. On top of that, we also introduced the missing safety requirements, thanks to a shift-to-rail safety study on what would be the train integrity safety requirements, and this is incorporated. And now, let's say, ETCS for moving block or for hybrid train detection with reduced train detections at track sites is fully specified. DAC, once it's ready in the next TSI, will provide as an external device this information to ETCS. So not only train integrity, but also another aspect is very important in digital rail. I think Klaus Mindel this morning spoke about a lot of national operational concept. Well, today we have a lot of national shunting concepts. And in our backlog of requests from the sector, there were a lot of shunting items. What we did is to prepare ETCS, once DAC is there, with a fully performant, what we call supervised maneuvers mode. It was developed from zero within EECT until the full set of specifications. I think people do not realize yet the importance and the features and the objectives that we will receive with the supervised maneuvers related to performance, automation, safety benefits, and less or no shunting signals at trackside. So this is the part of digital rail. Another thing that was already mentioned, modularity. We introduced, today we have different concepts on the train, how ETCS is interfaced with the rolling stock. It could be MVB, CAN technology. It's clearly now that the regulated target is Ethernet-based for all interfaces. So it's more, the CCS consist network will be Ethernet-based. So it will facilitate future integration, I don't know if train positioning or ATO GO34, it will improve to integrate the different components. The last topic, you know, in EECT, we get all the return of experience of existing projects. We had already, before the TSI, technical opinions with error corrections based on return of experience from projects. These are all incorporated in the ETCS specifications. Now, my last slide. On top, you see what we had in the previous TSI. So we had set 1, baseline 2, set 2, baseline 3, MR1, set 3, baseline 3, release 2, where for new vehicles, baseline 2 was not anymore allowed. And when this baseline 3, release 2 was introduced, what is now the return of experience? When it was introduced, we had a hard transition for new vehicles with a short time frame. DG Move received a lot of derogation requests on that to extend the timeline for baseline 2. On top, if I speak with our colleagues who deal with vehicle authorizations, what do we see today? We have a variety of baseline 3 MR1s and baseline 3 release 2, which contains a lot of, let's say, partial fulfillments with restrictions, conditions of use, which makes the authorization complex, expensive, and which is far from being an industrialized approach. So we clearly cleaned up the TSI where we removed the partial fulfillment, and Juan will speak about providing a softer transition regime for the new functionalities. And in this previous slide where I introduced all the changes, there was a main question, what do we do now? We could, like in the past, create one baseline 4 with all functionalities, but we, together with the industry, we checked what are the real market segments, and it led to 3 different standard configurations that are introduced. We speak about a baseline 4 release 1 up to system version 2.1, where we changed no functionality compared to baseline 3 release 2, but we included all error corrections and one important change request for limited supervision that was introduced by SBB DB, what we call relocation without linking. Our technical experts say that is an important achievement, that after a very long time we have a harmonized solution now for this functionality. A second thing is, what we also need short-term today, ATO. So ETCS onboard has a link with ATO onboard. It's a compatible change, so you're not obliged, you can still run without ATO. But the industry said, look, we really see in our contracts that there is an urgent need to have a standard configuration only with this ATO change requests. This is the second configuration. And the third one I call midterm with mandatory functionality, as I explained, is we have specifications which are ready for DAC and FMCS. Now I hand over to Juan.
Thanks, Guter. Good morning, everybody. So I will talk now about one of the new elements that has been introduced in the CCS TSI 2023, which are the transition periods. As Wouter already explained, in the past, the TSI was published and it was expected to be adopted in a short timing. We realized and we try to align also having a vehicle perspective, that having more predictability and a clearer path about how this will evolve. And then we will focus on two kinds of changes. The new functionalities, the enhancement that has been introduced that has a longer transition, but also another new element in the CCS TSI 2023 is the error correction process, which require a shorter transition regime. So for the enhancements, here there is one of the elements that is an equal distribution of the benefits and costs between IMs and RUs. And as it has been said in the first session this morning, the TSI has limited capabilities on how to address this, because we cannot rule market or we cannot impose certain restrictions on economic aspects. So let's go. Yeah. For example, the new functionalities, like supervised maneuvers, will allow IMs to remove some trackside assets, like the signals. But of course, this functionality is moved to the train, so increasing at some point the complexity, or to have the full benefits, we need DAC. So for that, we need to have some balance. What's the proposal in the CCS TSI? We want to address this into the national implementation plan, as it was already said this morning by Matthias, by the role of the different national coordination. So we think that the coordinators at national level are the ones to coordinate and to try to find the proper balance between IMs and RUs. What the TSI provides is a general framework of 5 years, where the IMs needs to notify when new functions are expected to be used trackside. So the RUs has this visibility, this predictability, in order to be prepared for the changes. So we acknowledge, as Joseph has just said, that evolution is needed, and sometimes we cannot prevent it. So we are just trying to manage it and to give a clearer way forward to that. So this is about how we propose to move on enhancements. Regarding the error corrections, then this is a more fundamental point, because this is about ensuring that the single European railway area can happen, because trains need to move freely through Europe without any technical or operational constraints. For that, we need to address those interoperability errors that, unfortunately, they are in the specifications, so we need to solve that in an harmonized way. For that, it's true that this is heavily dependent on the contribution from the suppliers. And for that, also quoting the MOU from 2016, there is a need for some different arrangement between customers and suppliers about how to manage the complete life cycles of the products. When errors are detected and the error correction process put the focus now not on the fixing but on the analysis, so the information is there. We are finishing all the questionnaires and all the BCA analysis in order to have the right tools. But the first thing we need to do is to know if something is potentially happening. And on those, we hope, limited cases when there is something, action need to be taken, then this need to be fixed. For that, we need the involvement of the suppliers. And that's where we try again to balance the benefits. In that case, IMs and RUs want to have better performance systems with potential no errors that can be used through the European network. Because now the new environment we are targeting is a more connected networks where more vehicles running across them. So we can find a solution or a mitigation measure in a specific network, but when these vehicles move to the next one, this needs to be fixed. So what we propose is a more industrialized approach that when you fix something, you need to fix something in one network, you already take the interoperable solution, the harmonized one, and then you are sure that you can use this vehicle throughout the rest of Europe. So we try to go to move away from tailor-made solutions to more harmonized things. So for that, the transition periods for these errors, once they are published and all the information is available in the TSI, is reduced compared to the previous 5 years. The maximum time this time is 3 years, so that's the maximum. And on the enhancement, the minimum time from announcement was 5 years, so the approach is different. In any case, we are moving from hard deadlines to softer transition periods. Of course, these are new elements, and then I will just give a short feedback on from the workshop from yesterday, where these elements are new. So a lot of discussions were having a correct understanding of the proposal which is within the TSI. But one key element which I like to highlight is that it was well appreciated and it was acknowledged that this is needed. So the problem is there and we need to solve it. Of course, the solutions can always be improved and we have some challenges on how to make it better. But this is the first time these topics are in the TSI. So we will take the return from experience and try to make a better TSI to be used to get the goals of the interoperability. And that's all from our side. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Wouter and Juan. Please take a seat here on the podium. Next speaker is Jean-Michel Evangelou from UIC. And Jean-Michel will give us an update on a topic that was mentioned several times already this morning, a key aspect of the evolution of ERTMS, a key feature of digitalization for European railways, FMCS. Jean-Michel, the floor is yours.
So, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Joseph, for the invitation. May I say, in the name of my general manager, my boss, who is there somewhere in the room, François Daven, that we absolutely appreciate the collaboration with ERA on these subjects because it's giving results. It's a good reason. And the second one is that we share a lot of the introduction elements you give in that presentation on the technical aspect because we are a technical body. So I will try to give you a view on how does it work, globally speaking, for specification in FMCS, in the context of all the things that you know. And for that, I will press the button. Well, so the first thing, I will not spend a lot of time, but I think we are clear on that. There is a necessity to replace GSMR because of obsolescence, but there is also a necessity because that FMCS, which will be the replacement, will bring a lot of additional things, necessary things that will enable the game changer, the digitalization of the train, such as ATO, TCMS, all these things. All these things will not happen without FMCS, so it's an obligation and also a plus, an enabler for digitalization. What is important to state at the end is that we all know and we need to understand that it will take a lot of time to replace the GSMR, so that the fact to go fast is very important. And that's what we did from 2018, 2019 with the agency in Europe, trying to accelerate the thing in order, because the migration needs to be done. And so it will take 15 years with all the networks, probably something like that. So we need to go fast. That's, for me, this is a clear message. But going fast, but with things that are, let's say, prepared and working, of course. So the global context, if it works, yes. The global context. So I think you know that UIC is leading the specification, the technical specification stream of FMCS as a little bit as a GSMR continuity. For that, we have a structure as per 2018-19, a lot of groups from railway people trying to address all the elements of FMCS in terms of technical aspect. You have a small scheme on the right side of the slide. The governance of this group of railways is driven by something we call ERIG, which is a UIC group, European Railway railway implementers group, because they implement, it's really manager in charge of implementing GSMR and tomorrow FMCS. And we have 23 of them, which is quite, I think, a good panel. Not the totality of Europe, but quite a good element of that. And they give somewhere the direction of all the things we have to do in all the technical group. So that's where we define really the FMCS thing. The FMCS system is defined there in these groups. It has been defined. That's the good news. So the second element, which is important, is ETSI. In ETSI, we have a special group for railways, which is looking at the specificities of the railway domain. And so we call ETSI as a support to what we do, in order to look at the small mechanism, into the products of telecoms. And so somewhere there is a synchronization between the two elements. Of course, I have to mention the key role, the central role of Unitel. So Unitel Unife Committee, with a lot of railway telecom companies, and 20 years, as you see on the slide, of real collaboration, even if sometimes we are not always in agreement, but good collaboration. And with that, we have I would say, the element of industry, which is pushing us, which is stopping us, which is helping us. A very important point in the strategy is 3GPP. That's another animal of the telecom galaxy, but this animal is very important because that's the worldwide body in charge of standardization for mobile network. So this is the worldwide authority for that. So we decided as a strategy at the beginning of FMCS to say we will put our things in 3GPP in order to, let's say, in order to have a perennial thing, to have an evolution, the day there will be 6G, these sort of things, so that we are in the flow of the telecoms. Also, other aspect, with that, we help the competition and we help the attractivity of FMCS to the global telecom galaxy. And I would like to give an example of that, just to have some proof point. You may know that today in GSMR we have 2 players in terms of telecom networks. Probably in FMCS there will be 3, at least in Europe. I'm speaking of European companies. I'm not speaking of outside companies from Europe. So for me it's a good point because it's giving competition, it's improving the products, and all these things. I'm mentioning ERA, but there is not an order here. But of course, ERA is the ERTMS authority, and so all what we are doing in Europe for FMCS has to be worked with ERA. So we have a specific process for that. I think it will be well explained after, and so we are completely, let's say, embedded in that process. But we start to work before that process. I would like to mention that ERA is participating since years to all the groups we are doing. So they don't discover one day the things, they are there and they help to go in the right direction as well. Important element also, in Europe there is a very important thing which is ERGU, and there is also of course the Commission. And so there was a lot of discussion on that, but we decided all together to have a sort of strategic alignment between what we do in UIC and what the Commission is going there with the ERGU project and this sort of thing. So we did that last year. I think it was a good move, and so it was done through a specific MOU. And also it permitted the Commission and ERGU to consider FMCS as a project to be really developed, and open the door to a specific project for you will see that after, to do let's say the verification of FMCS V2, what we call specification V2, and we call that project today Destination 2, Moran 2. There is several names, but that's a project that we should develop in the coming months, starting in the coming months. I have to mention also that we had the chance to, all this development, to have the support of DG Connect at a moment of time, to develop what we called a project during 3 years called 5G Rail, which permitted to make the first prototype of FMCS, and then to check that what we are doing and we are creating as a system was not completely out of the scope. So this project finished with successful achievement, and so it's also an element of the global progress. We are not doing only specification, but at the same time, we are trying to look in reality what it means. with real tests, 5G rail with real tests in France, in Germany, with real trains, with real prototypes. And so it paves the way to go the next step. So you have here the story somewhere of the last years. So I will not enter in all of them, but we're starting with the concept of IP, the concept of 5G. So it was a choice at the beginning, no 4G, 5G, clearly, because the time where we put 5G FMCS on the field, we will be 5G. So 4G will be somewhere the old technology. So we have to start with the best technology somewhere. We had this, I told you, this 5G rail 3 years project to make the prototypes. Very important point, some years ago, we obtained altogether the harmonization of frequencies in Europe, which is quite important. Also to mention there that there was additional frequencies for FMCS. So at this time, it's difficult to know exactly what would be the use for that, but I'm sure that we will need that for a new application and also for the migration transition that will not be easy in the same frequency. So, but it is an important thing that was given to railways for their specific usage, a recognition of the importance of railways in European spectrum. So a very important thing. We remitted through the ERA process and with the ERA the document to set what we call the FMCS V1 version that gave, I like this name coming from a colleague from Deutsche Bahn, legal anchor in the TSI to give the signal that FMCS was really the next technology that we will consider in the ERTMS, in TMS spectrum in Europe. So we did that some years ago, or 1 year ago. The time is going fast. Huh? Also a global plan, very important. You see that in alignment with Europe, with European authorities, with the agency, and with the RGU. We define a global plan with the system pillar activities of the RGU. We define a global plan that is the plan for all of us. So there is not one plan from somebody, another one. It's a global plan for the next 3-4 years. A small detail, but it's a sort of advertisement. At the same time, we, as UIC, we thought that it was important to start to give some possibility to educate people or to train people. And so we opened a special stream for that around FMCS. So, and we started, it's very interesting. We started in November last year. We are, I think, in April. We already trained 100 people, believe it. So I think it's something which is part of the plan. We always forget that part, but I think we have to do that. Very important point, and we are there. There was a commitment from UIC to give to the agency, to provide to the agency the V2 specification that will drive the rest of the story, and particularly the destination to Moran project. It was supposed to be done by March as a limit. It was done in March. And so we are now entering into the process of working on final specification with the agency. So I would say we are in the plan. It's difficult, it's a lot of work, but we are there. I just put that figure. It's an extract from the official ERGU report on FMCS from last year. So it's a global thing approved by the sector. It's just to say that we have that plan. It's just to demonstrate that the plan is common. Okay, and you see some date, but I will not enter in all these dates. More or less, you have the element of them. I just want to make, we always speak of specification, what it is. So I will not describe the hundreds and hundreds of pages, but I will just say there is 5 key documents. The first one is on the functional requirement of FMCS. Just to mention that there is 1,500 more or less requirements in this functional specification today. What is interesting to note is that we will have to work very strongly only on the 700 of them, because the 700 are more for future version of FMCS, which means that we have been working on the next stage. So, which is quite important to say as well. This is a continuous process. The second element is what we call the system specification, which is the description of all the architecture, the principle, the communication mechanism, the quality of service of FMCS. You have all of these things inside this document. It's describing how the system works, globally speaking. in terms of telecom usage, in terms of functional usage, how does all these elements, trackside, onboard, trackside servers, all these things are working together in a 5G environment. It starts to be a technical document. FMC TOBA FRS. So we put TOBA is the onboard track. This is the onboard element of FMCS, as you know, telecom onboard architecture. It means TOBA, and so we said we need a specific document to describe the onboard. It's so much important because it's somewhere a disruption in the way of doing telecoms in the train, because it will be the hub. And I remember the image from Joseph some years ago with the train saying, I've got an IP address. This is exactly that somewhere, okay? Because all the communication will have to go through that thing, professional and critical communication. So this was important to have this document. Another document, so there after the fourth and the fifth are much more technical because they are describing the real functional interface specification. This is very important because this is where we speak with ETCS, for example. This is where we speak with ATO. This is where we will speak with TCMS. This is where we will speak with other things, video or whatever. So that's here that you have all the interface protocol and this sort of thing, based on mechanism that we have done in 3GPP and reviewed by ETSI. So there is all a mechanism that everything is working together. The last one is the worst of it, is all the parameters APIs for interface. It's a sort of document giving somewhere the programming of the interface to use FMCS from an external application. So it's a complete set of things. You take that, you add the 3GPP technical specification that we are working in 3GPP every month, because we have a group of people working in 3GPP to push all these things into the standards, release 17, release 18, it's starting in release 15, to be honest. And you add also ETSI, which is working on specific things and regrouping all that things, and you have the complete specification set of FMCS. But somewhere, everything is, not somewhere, it is driven from there. Everything is indicated here. After you have to complete what I like to call the building blocks from telecom side. Important, and to finish, because I'm taking time. Next step. So it's very simple. We enter into the process with ERA, a formal process, but I will let Begonia speak of that. We have to, ETSI has to remit the part of ETSI specification, so it will be at the end of the year. Very important, as you know, to understand, we are entering into this Destination 2 Moran project, so there is a call from the RGU. We are currently setting up a consortium, the right consortium to trying to set the right consortium to respond to that call, together with 4 highways. So 4 companies are committed to do a thing in terms of tests. We are speaking of real tests, again. And plus of 10 telecom suppliers. I don't know what will be the final thing because we are doing it as of today. Clearly, the objective is what? Is to get the V2, to use the V2, to check everything in V2 in order to go to a V3 at the end. And the V3 will be the first implementable market-ready version of FMCS. So we try to be at TRL 7. We don't try. We will be at TRL 6, 7. That's an obligation. We want to at the end have a system that you see the following step that will be usable for first pilots in Europe by 2027, something like that, by some companies, in order to start their first pilot as a sort of starting of deployments. So that's exactly the plan. And of course, in parallel, this is what I call the objective. The objective is to have a market-ready FMCS. For me, that's the most important thing to do. And in parallel, there will be the work on V3 with the ERTMS authority, the agency, and also at the level of European Commission. How does it work with the TSI? It's not completely defined as of today, but we want to go in that direction. And we try to go in that direction. I just want to finish saying that there will be the first market ready in 2027. Let's cross fingers, version of FMCS. It will be what we call the FMCS first edition. Of course, there will be other things to do because ATO, GOA3, GOA4 will come. We'll have to work on other aspects. All the requirements that I talked to you about at the beginning of the presentation, they are there, and we have to look at them. For example, let's say, more data, less voice, this sort of thing will be for the future with ATO train. We have to work on that, but at least we will have a version which will be fully replacing GSMR with additional functionality, which is the objective, the first objective. So that's where we are. We are on planning. We have a lot of work. We have a good collaboration, but we have to go there.
Many thanks, Jean-Michel. We continue on FMCS, and I ask my colleague Begoña Domingo on stage, and Begoña will tell us about the preparations for testing FMCS version 2. Begoña, the floor is yours, and Jean-Michel, please join us on stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joseph. And thanks to Jean-Michel, because I think that he has spoken so much about FRMCS version 2 that we already are familiar with what is the content, what is the general planning, the timeline. So I'm not going to repeat, I'm not going to go into all these details, but I want to focus on the specific moment of the TSI publication. Why is it important that FRMCS version 1 was in the TSI? Because it set the basis. It sets the basis that we are going to use a 5G based system. That is quite important. It sets the basis that we have some specific frequencies for railway use. We set the basis also that the system envisaged is going to be open to use other radio bearers, so multiple use of different bearers. And this is quite key, but it is only a starting point. So what we have in the TSI, as Wouter has also explained, is FRMCS readiness for ETCS and ATO applications. This is what we have in the TSI today. But we need to go along a very long road in a very short time. And in order to go in a safe manner and in a stable manner, we need to set intermediate deadlines. And we have an intermediate deadline that has been you have listened about it, this version 2. So I just want to focus on that specific point where we are now about FRMCS version 2. So we speak about FRMCS. We've heard this concept of the 3GPP building blocks. We see in many pictures that there are different layers. We have railway applications on top of these building blocks, but in the middle we have different services. So this is a very complex ecosystem. The railway applications is the top layer, and this is really the only specific part of the overall system that is only by railways and for railway use. We need to base the development in other services that are used also by other technologies that have common needs, and these are the mission critical services. These are not specified here. These are specified by 3GPP. We have heard how complex is the environment. You cannot imagine, if you're not in this telecom discussion system, how complex it is. Indeed, we need to base our system in these services and also on the 3GPP building blocks of 5G. So we cannot forget and we cannot close the eyes and we cannot be alert that not everything is already there. So we are trying to advance as much as possible, but it's true that all these 3GPP work, the work to be done in NETC is not ready, is not closed now. It's actually being discussed. And we will not have it, not even by the end of this year. We will not have everything that ideally we would wish for by the end of this year. But we need to survive and we need to continue working and we need to assume that there will be things that will not be there because we don't have the building blocks yet. So not to forget that we have that complex environment on top of let's say, the great tasks that we have ahead. We speak about FRMCS V2. We speak about these difficulties. We speak about the railway applications that need to be ready for testing. With respect to the voice applications, we need to have at least the functionalities that we currently have in GSMR, if not more. But at least we need to have a system that can be replacing GSMR. And this is what we need to have in this FRMCS version 2, at least this for the voice. For ETCS and ATO, in terms of the technical building blocks, what we need is, of course, the capability of transmitting data, which is, if you want, the easiest because it's, let's say, is the part that is commercially more developed. But we do have some difficulties as well. With respect to the architecture, I would like to focus on that as well, because sometimes we speak about FRMCS, we just think about, yeah, it's a telecom system, but my mobile does it perfectly well. I get a mobile that is 5G ready. How comes that the train cannot get it? Well, main point here, we are changing the architecture, and this is key. This is key for the evolution. This is key for the maintainability of the onboards and on the track side. So we are changing that. We are introducing an interface between the different applications, and we're introducing a single gateway to provide communication services to all these applications. So we already have the definition of the interface for ETCS and ATO in the current TSI, but we need to have it for all these other applications, mainly for the voice applications. So where are we today on this? So we have received these draft specifications from UIC on time, with a lot of work behind, but we need to start the review of the requirements that are in them. Why? Because they are very complex, because we need the support of everybody who is involved in the sector, and we need to reach this point of having some stable and well-defined interfaces and the definition of the different subsystems in these specifications. We are going to focus, obviously, on the interoperability interface, so that means trackside to onboard, but also on this interface between the different elements, so mainly on this interface between the gateway and the other applications. So the review of these specs has already started. So we did receive them end of March. We have a set process, change control management process. This is nothing new, it's business as usual. But we are applying in this process to these specifications that are not going to be directly in the TSI. They are a step towards this inclusion. So we are applying the process on which, so we have the contribution and we have the participation of all the UIC groups, of course, but also, most important, we have the representative organizations. We have CER, EIM, Unitel. We are chairing the group, but we need to have the efforts of everybody to achieve the goal of reviewing these specs in order to have them completed. For this, we have a very tight schedule, very tight. You saw in the presentation from Jean-Michel that only the FRS has around 1,000 something requirements. Fair enough, not all of them are for V2, and thank God for that, because otherwise it would be impossible. But even with that, we already went through the first review round of FRS, and we got 508 comments that need to be reviewed, need to be discussed, and they may conclude on changes, modifications that may impact other specifications that are also for review. So we do have a very tight schedule. We need to be on time. So some would say, okay, but what's the rush for FMCS V2? We have had, we are short in time, there's a big task ahead. Of course, it's not going to be a big bang like, boom, 2035, all the networks are going to be having FMCS, all the vehicles are going to be equipped. That's no way going to happen, but we need to be ready. We need to be ready for those needing to start procuring, those needing start thinking about what needs to be changed, what needs to be changed on the onboards, what needs to be prepared in the track side. Yesterday in the workshop, we got a lot of interaction with different actors, and there were messages of, we need this as soon as possible. We need to start preparing the vehicles. We need to start knowing how many antennas we need, how are they going to be located, what are the constraints. So we need to have that as soon as possible. It's true that in the TSI we don't have a deadline for finishing this review of documents in order to allow a stable basis for testing, but we do have the input from the report from ERJU, and this points to the need of having them ready, of course, for the EU trials. The EU trials, we have heard as well, there's a call for projects ongoing, and the actual start of the testing may be as early as next year. So we really need to have everything ready by the end of this year. And this is what we are trying to get with the effort of everybody who is participating in the ECT, with the effort of everybody who is behind all these discussions. So together, we want to get to this milestone of getting a technical opinion published by the end of 2024 with a stable basis for those who want to start testing. So what to expect in the technical opinion? We can expect to have version 2 requirements. So these are the requirements that have system requirements set and defined, and that they can be tested actually in the testing activities, so that they can be validated, and they are the basis for the version 3, or the version that will be in the TSI. We will also have an identification of candidate requirements for interoperability. Candidate because there's still a lot of discussion to be in place, but we will already identify which functionalities are needed for interoperability, and this will help focusing on them also for the V3. And there will be also some requirements marked as V3, and these requirements marked as V3 are not going to be fully developed, because the building blocks are either not there or decisions have not been taken. But of course, during testing, we expect that some of them will be a part of this testing, so that the return of experience during the testing will help us to finalize the version V3 when this is the time. So with the testing, with the exercise of having this technical opinion published, we expect that the user needs can be covered with respects to the replacement of GSMR, with respects also to the demonstration and testing of the border crossing. Border crossing is really one of the key points that we need to get resolved. We will have as well some important part of the testing for the track side, for the structure of the track side, for the elements, for these mission critical services, etc. And of course, for the new architecture on board, the gateway serving the different applications with the telecommunication services. So this is what to expect in the technical opinion. Thanks to the efforts of everybody, we are sure that we are going to make it happen. Thank you.
Many thanks, Begonia. As promised at the beginning, and I'm losing my microphone, so as promised at the beginning, we will also discuss the future, and the last speaker in session 2 is Wawrzyniec Perszke. Wawka, please join us on stage and give us an outlook about STIP, Europe's rail, and the future of the legal framework for ERTMS.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Let's go into the concrete discussion. We would like to look now at what comes next. You've seen already what was in the recent revision. You see the main component of the future revision, so what we are going to do and how we are going to do together with all stakeholders about FMCS. And let's then discuss what do we want to take in terms of next steps, how do we look at this process, and also how do we count on your contribution. And this is a stepwise approach where we all contribute and we try to have an evolution of the system very similar to the slide that you have seen presented by Josef earlier today, where the planning was already set in 2005 and was showing clearly the evolution of the ERTMS system throughout the years. So now we are in a situation where FMCS is the thing that is required by all of you, and it is added in the revision that will come around 2027. It will be almost entirely focused on FMCS. What we may add is cybersecurity, but it's more of a placeholder. Let's be frank, cybersecurity is mostly solved through the horizontal legislation, the Cyber Resilience Act, the Network Information Security Directive, and only tiny bits that would translate these generic requirements into more railway-specific issues would really need to be done. And we add links to the digital automatic coupler, the essential things that may be necessary to support the testing. But let me stress it again, FMCS is the key. FMCS will not wait for other things if they will not be ready, and will proceed forward, drawing the attention on the fact that the key changes will be in the technical documents, in the subsets. So in principle, we will not touch too much in this time the core text of the regulation. Now, slightly after, and in parallel to these discussions, we are going to look at something more substantial, things that are requested by the sector, but may take a bit more time, and are there in order to help address major challenges that were already mentioned in the workshops, were mentioned this morning, and were mentioned by you very many times when you were meeting with us and flagging the challenges you have when deploying ERTMS. In order to help make things cost efficient, we are bringing further modularity, and there it will be about number of interfaces, and these interfaces will include train integrity or interfaces to the absolute safe train positioning, or issues related to the full common bus. Now, all of this is brought on a voluntary basis, and the modularity as an obligatory thing will be introduced with longer transition periods, exactly in order to provide a planning process for you, but with sufficient flexibility so that you are not hit hard by the requirements. We're also looking at the improvements of the DMI, but not touching the hardware. It's going to be the display that is going to be re-engineered according to discussions that are already ongoing. Now, harmonization was the keyword today in order to stress how to proceed with lower costs. And here we look at the outcomes of the discussion around how to reduce the number of ESC, RSC checks. We make sure that we bring consistency of engineering rules and operational rules in relation to new functionalities, so that what is brought now in the specifications has got clear solutions, detailed solutions, and no divergent options in the engineering rules and operational aspects. And we will further streamline operational processes, such as, for instance, the start of mission. Now, we also take a critical look at the TSI itself. We will try to make sure that the glossaries and vocabulary throughout the TSI is streamlined. We will look at how the relation to standards is organized, reduce the text in the TSI if it's included in the standard, make sure that we may opt for harmonized standards if the requirements can be put there, and essentially update whenever necessary the links to the standard in the TSI. We will look at the certification and authorization processes so that they can support the expected rollout of both ERTMS and FMCS in the future, and make sure the process is as efficient as possible. Now, among others, it's the tackling of the ESC, RSC, obviously, in the authorization process. It's about testing in a more virtual environment, and this is how we will try to tackle it. Now, going beyond and going to the vision that was presented earlier this morning, we will provide the full automated train operations. It will include remote train operations. It will go into satellite-based absolute safe train positioning and allow, together with train integrity, to get rid of trackside equipment. We will make one system via full operational harmonization, and we should complete modularity based on a system pillar delivered architecture of CCS TSI. Now, how we want to go there? So we count on a process which we have triggered. We have provided initial ideas for the TSI requests. We have received your comments. We are submitting the first draft of the TSI requests to your comments, and you are now having the time to make comments until early May. Now, once we receive these comments, we will redraft the TSI requests so that it takes into account your voice, your opinions, your ways to improve this TSI request and reflect the needs of the sector. And in final way, we will discuss it in risk and be able to submit it to the agency so that the progress can be made on the TSIs together with you here within the agency, based on the input that will be frequently provided by the system pillar and the EU rail joint undertaking. Now, why do we try to do it? We want to give a long-term vision which improves the predictability and delivers the stability that you're looking for, while making sure that we can bring in innovation and we can stay competitive. We do it also in this open, transparent manner so that we have full sector participation. And we want to flag to you that we will do revisions of the TSI request. So if need be, there is a certain mechanism for flexibility. Now, as mentioned, this is in conjunction with the standardization and TSI input plan that is brought by the system pillar. Now, your role. And obviously, this is essential. You're there, and when you bring your comments, try to be as comprehensive in your discussion as possible so that it reflects the voice of all the participants. We count on your comments on the TSI request, on the STIP as well, and also on your active contribution to not only the discussion, but once the direction is done, is that you as experts, those of you that participate in the innovation process, in the shaping of specifications, you deliver the best so that we can go further with that. And then, those of you that commit to apply those specifications, well, let's use them in the most vanilla fashion as possible, and in this way contribute to having an affordable system which is standardized, which is single, and which can ensure that railways are modern and compete as a mode of transport. And if we do achieve that, this is what I believe we can look forward. Thank you.
Many thanks, Wafka. We are slightly behind time, but I believe, given the most interesting series of presentations, we should at least try to have 2 or 3 questions. There have been many questions already on Slido, but I would like to give priority to the room here. Is anyone wanting to? Yes, there was first one. Please, the speaker to my left. Can we have microphone? Microphone is coming. Please introduce yourself and let us know your question.
Hello, my name is Jaroslav Tyle. I'm from Association of Rail Freight Carriers of the Czech Republic. I have some comments to presentation of Mr. Malphite and Mr. Hernandez. So we have seen a perspective of baseline 4. Maybe, or probably you know the progress in Czechia in last months. The RUs invested huge money in onboard units with the highest version at the market, the baseline 3, and also money from the EU funding. Now, when we see the perspective, it means that the money are put in waste, or will be soon put in waste. And I'm afraid that this is not a good message. Mr. Ritte told us in the morning that we have to speed up the installation and implementation of ERTMS, and this message with baseline 4, which is not yet in the market, means the opposite result. We are demotivated to invest any money in onboard units until there is ready at the market the final version.
Well, many thanks for your question. Before I give the floor back to the participants, 2 points of clarification. The driver for you is not the availability of baseline 4 onboard units, because you might have seen on the slides of Juan and Wouter that baseline 4, of course, also comprises the functionality of the former baseline 3. So you have to be a bit more generous. The driver is when in the Czech Republic you will have FMCS rolled out. And then you can put your onboard units baseline 3 into the waste. Until the GSMR is decommissioned, and this will be many years in the future, you will have no problems. So just to clarify, yeah? And as we explained before, the problem is not driven by Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Malphite. The problem is driven that GSMR is no longer available because nobody is able to supply any components because it's technology from 1992. If you look into your pocket, you will certainly have an iPhone or something similar, but you will not have a Nokia of 1992. You will have an iPhone of 2015. So, Wouter or...
Yes, thank you for your question. It's the most important question, I think, for everybody. It was also, for me, the most important question. First of all, I repeat what Joseph said. The national implementation plan should come with a clear migration strategy when GSMR will be decommissioned. This coordination role is important, and this triggers when you need, let's say, ETCS to be ready for FMCS. I think on one of the slides from my colleagues from FMCS, you saw that the first switch off of GSMR is for 2032, according to this regulatory framework. So between now and 2032, you will normally not need ETCS system version 3.0 to be ready for FMCS. But what was the mandate really intending is be ready with the specifications that you have this long migration period between today, where baseline 4 specifications are available, and 2032.
Yeah. So the specification is one thing because we cannot close our eyes, and somebody has put in Slido the question, what do we do if FMCS is not ready and GSMR is no longer available? So that is the worst case. The only thing that we can do is to make sure that the specifications for FMCS are ready and the products can be developed. But that does not mean that anyone has to decommission GSMR as soon as possible. There is certainly the risk that GSMR will no longer work because we cannot have components, but we have to make sure that the new technical solution is available as soon as possible. Another question from the floor, Carol.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Joseph, for the floor. Regarding my iPhone, Joseph, I have a model version 8 refurbished in 21. It's not a very high-level one, but according to my needs, it's perfect. And I would like to share very briefly the position of my members about the ERTMS deployment. They consider that the target should be one core system version for a realistic Europe-wide coordinated rollout with long-term maturity. This target must be achieved by creating a first plateau as industry standard, which consists of proven and available ETCS technology, which is the version 2.0, plus added to that the new requirement for FMCS. And they consider that the innovations are of course encouraged, but their implementation on rolling stock should be on a voluntary and economically sound basis. What do you think about that?
What I think about that is that what your members demand is not far from what Wouter and Juan have presented. So we have we have the baseline for release 1. In that we have the system version 2, which corresponds to the baseline 3, and then we have the system version 3, which takes into account FMCS. And again, FMCS migration is not because the Commission has decided that we want to change. It's not because ERA has decided we want to change. It's because of the fact that, by the way, in 2015, the suppliers have informed us that GSMR will be obsolete by 2030. So that's the situation. That's the situation that we have managed in a transparent process. We have prepared a recommendation in 2022. The recommendation was discussed in risk, and finally it was voted, and this is the situation. We will have this afternoon a meeting of the ERTMS stakeholder platform. We will, of course, discuss any possibilities for enabling what we could call intermediary steps between the baseline 3 and the baseline 4, provided that these intermediary steps are technically and commercially feasible. We are open to that, both the Commission and us. We will discuss. But trust us, the presentation made by Walter, Juan, Begonia, Jean-Michel, and Wafka, this is based on the collaborative process, taking into account all the input from the representative bodies and from the stakeholders. The situation is complex, and it has been a collaborative process. We are, of course, listening to any input, but of course, it needs to be based on solid evidence and solid evaluation. And commercial arguments are clearly one aspect. But again, as long as you have GSMR, there is no need to be forced to migrate. So, final question.
Hello, Stephen. Is it working? Hello?
Yes, it's working.
Stephen Herod, Technical University of Denmark, Associate Professor. I have to back up some of these comments from a research point of view, from an academic point of view, that I find very, very little cost-benefit analysis in the literature or in the research on any of these technologies. And I very much search for this information. I've interviewed infrastructure operators in Scandinavia personally, and they also cannot show me cost-benefit analysis for many of these technologies, and it's very difficult. But what I really find as a researcher troubling is that most of the research money that is distributed on the basis of technical novelty. So if you're writing an application for research and you want to get funding for research, you have to show some kind of technical novelty to get the money. You don't have to show cost-benefit analysis. You don't have to show that this is a business case, that you're actually doing something. And this is very troubling for the direction of all these technologies, that they're going forward at great speed, but mostly on the basis of technical novelty, not on the basis of how does this actually serve the industry or the businesses or the operators. And I hear the comments from some of these other people here today who are also expressing this discomfort that the process is moving forward on the basis of technical novelty and not on the basis of a commercial case analysis. And I think that needs to be directed much more carefully here. And there should be funding for more business case analysis. I, as a researcher at DTU, I have no access to funding right now. If I want to do any kind of economic analysis or any kind of base analysis of these systems, I cannot apply for that to Horizon EU or to Shift to Rail because they will not fund me. They will only fund me if I present some kind of new, advanced, satellite-sponsored technology, but they will not fund me if I want to simply do a rail freight analysis of the economics of rail freight.
Many
It's a
thanks.
very, very big problem.
Many thanks for your comment. We can discuss offline how you will manage the obsolescence of GSMR by your cost-benefit analysis. So we can discuss that offline. Thank once again the participants. A round of applause. Next agenda item is lunch, And before lunch, I invite all of you to the group picture. Please join us on the way down to lunch. We will briefly gather for a group picture. Thank you very much.